Hey everyone, today we'll be going over the concept of a mask brush and masking options in Blender. So this is the first episode in which I will be explaining the mask tool, and in the second episode we will go over the face sets. So first I will explain why I use the mask brush, what it does, and then we will go into more details. So our school here, he will be our test dummy, and he will go through a lot today. So to use the brush, you need to be in the sculpt mode. So up here, object mode, sculpt mode. And under the brushes, let me just expand this for you. You will find a mask brush here under the simplify brush. So what is a mask brush? It paints an area, and that painted area will not be affected by any brush or any edits you do on your mesh. So let me just show you real quick. Let me just paint his cheek like this. You can see it turns black. And then when I grab an grab brush, grab a rubber, then you can see that I can move only the area around the brush, around, other words, the painted area, but I cannot do anything to the area I painted. And I can even try with a draw brush. I cannot draw onto it. So let me just undo the deformations I've done on him. Control Z. And then the shortcut for the mask brush is M on your keyboard, and it will automatically transfer you to it. So here we have the positive and the negative direction. The positive direction will draw, and the negative direction is used to erase the mask once you have drawn it. So we can use this to remove the mask, and there are two other options which we can use to remove the mask. So let's go over them. Let's first draw some mask. So one option is up here under the mask settings. We have this option clear mask. Otherwise, the shortcut for it is Alt M. So click this, or I hold Alt and press M, and it will clear the mask. The other option is to remesh. So under the remesh option, you will have all these preserve options, and when you have them ticked on, it will preserve the volume, paint mask, face sets. So if you want to remove your paint mask, you can just disable this and then click on remesh, and you can see it removed it. And another option, let me draw it again, something like this, is to go down in the object data properties and then scroll down under the geometry data, and here we have the clear sculpt mask data. The reason you cannot clear it here is because you can only do it from the object mode. So back into the object mode, we can just simply press this, go back into the sculpt mode, and our face is clean. So the alt time is probably the quickest way. And one thing I also want to mention is we have the strength of the mask brush. So when we lower the strength, it will basically draw a line that is more like smooth. So it will be less noticeable, and we'll be able to actually manipulate the drawn area a bit more. So bigger the value, the stronger the masking effect will be. Let me just undo that real quick, and then we get to the fun part. So all we also have here is a mask option. In other words, a mask tab with many options. We'll go over them and over the basics of them. So we have this interesting one, which I use probably the most, and that is invert mask. Let me give you a good example. I want to alter his front teeth without messing up his nose. So let me just first paint his nose. And just wait a little bit, I will explain why. So, okay. We just painted, and then by pressing or holding Control and pressing I can invert the mask, or we can go up here and click on invert mask. So let me just first grab an Alexa deform brush, and now I can just freely move around the teeth without affecting the nose. And then when I press Ctrl I can tweak the nose, for example, scrape it here, without doing anything to the teeth or other parts of the mesh. Let's press Alt-M to clear the mask. Pretty nice, isn't it? So the other options we have are the fill mask option, which will fill the whole skull with a mask, otherwise the whole object you have selected, clear mask or Alt-M. And then we have two other masks, which are basically the ways you put on the mask. So now we have been putting on the mask using a draw brush, but we can also box select or lasso. So let me show you. I can select this part here, and you can see now I have like this part is masked, and the other one is the lasso mask, and basically you know how the lasso works. So this area that is like in the circle will now be masked. It is pretty neat when you want to mask a huge part of the area quickly and precisely. We also have some of the features that will tweak our mask once we have painted it. So let us paint like a pretty sloppy mask. Like this, it's like it is sloppy. We want it to be as sloppy as we can. So we can see, because these things will improve our mask. One of them is smooth mask, which will basically smooth the edges and make it look much better. So down here, if we click, we have some of the options. One of them is the auto iteration count, and it basically means that when you enable it, the Blender will like calculate what is the best option for this, like how it should affect the geometry based on how it looks like, and in different things it will give us different results. Now it actually does a pretty good thing. It actually smooths it like we want to, and we have the iterations. Increasing that will increase the effect, at least slightly. For example, we can see it more like this. It's pretty subtle because you want it to be. The other one is the opposite, otherwise the sharpen mask. And here it's pretty interesting. When I click on iterations count, it will make it much more sharp. And then we also have the grow and shrink mask. And that is basically, it affects the area you want to have masked. So grow will grow the area of your mask, otherwise your selection, and the shrink will make it less. So you can see if I click this, it will just grow it a bit, and if I click this, it will grow it a bit more, because based on the geometry. Otherwise, if you want to select more of the parts, so instead of drawing those parts, you can just use the mask grow. The shrink is opposite. It's pretty nice to use to smooth it after you've grown your mask. And we also have increase and decrease contrast. So you can see it does not work on this because we did it on a pretty high strength. Let me just paint a bit softer parts, for example here. And now let's go here and increase the contrast. You can see that the mask gradually gets stronger, but it does add a nice smooth effect around the edges. Unless I click this, then it literally just increases the contrast to the maximum amount. The same is for the decrease contrast, in which case it masks the whole head, yes. So I recommend using only the increased contrast. So let's clear our mask with Alt-M. Let's see what other options we have. So we can expand the mask by topology or expand it by normals. For example, if we draw a part here, we can expand mask by topology. We can click on the part and it will expand it as it thinks it should look like. So in this case, it will expand it on the whole object since it is just a one single mesh. And then we also have the expand mask by normals, which is pretty similar. But the one interesting I love is the next one. Let me just undo this, because here we want to paint the mask. So if this will be useful if you're doing clothes, for example. Let me just mask a certain area. Let us mask his nose again, like this. It doesn't have to be pretty. Let me just, this is for scientific purposes. Just paint this. I'll paint his nose, and then we can just do the mask extract. So what it does, it will basically grab a part you have painted and it will make it into a new object. It's basically like you have hot metal, hot aluminum, whatever, and you pour it into a mold. Then that aluminum or metal will get colder over time and you will have a whole new object, which will be the same as the mold you have put it in. So we have the threshold, which is okay as it is. The boundary loop will add an edge around the whole mask and make it much easier to manipulate later. And extract a solid will automatically add a solidify modifier to the object. So when I extract it, it will take some time. You can see we have dots. Well, everything's fine, you just need to move it. Like this, we have our nose. And now you can see it is a separate object also. And when you go to modifiers, we have the solidify modifier there. So I can just fix it and you can see we have our nose. And this is useful, as I said, for clothes. For example, when you're sculpting the body, first you want to define the muscles and anatomy, and then you can just paint over the parts you want to have covered in clothes. And then you just mask and extract the mask. And now you have, for example, a t-shirt, trousers, and then you just put on some details, some wrinkles, and other things, textures to the clothes. Isolate his nose. And then we have another different approach, which is also pretty interesting. And that is the mask slice. So slice basically is like you grab a knife and slice the part of a bread. So it will otherwise destroy the geometry and remove the vertices that are covered with paint. So now he will have no nose. He's a little Voldemort now. Okay, let's undo that so we can cut his nose again. Told you he's going to go through a lot. They have the mask slice and fill holes, so it'll basically fill the hole with geometry, so you do not have to. And now you can see it does a pretty wonky job, but do not worry, you can always remesh and then use a brush to smooth it out. And while we are at it, when you have your mask brush selected, you cannot smooth your object, only the mask. So for example, if you want to smooth a part of the mesh, you have to switch to the other brush and then you can smooth it. Yeah, let's undo this. We want his nose back. Okay. He's back with his nose. And the mask slice to new object. We literally just slice the nose. It's like weird. We'll grab a part of the mesh you have sliced, make it into an object, and it will leave a mark. It's basically like when you cut bread, you just have the other part of the bread. It does not disappear into the void of nothingness. At least I explained it, okay? Okay, let's just undo it. Void of nothingness. Okay. Okay, he got his nose back and he's all happy now. Let's go to the last part. So we also have some interesting options. Mask from cavity. So what are cavities, first of all? Cavities are like an option that helps you accent the dark shading in like the crevices on the model. The best way to see that is because you can see now it made some difference, but let me just show you the cavity in the viewport shading. So when I enable it, let me just increase it to the maximum so you can see the effect. Both. And you can see the areas that before were like darker, had shadow, are now a bit darker. And the areas that were sharp are a bit lighter. In other words, it increases the contrast between the dark areas and the light areas, making it more pronounced. It's like the opposite of smoothing. And it's used to make like the low poly objects look more detailed than they are. Let's disable the cavity. And the mask from cavity is pretty interesting because I think it can be used to sharpen the areas that are like very sharp. So now you can see the masked areas are the ones that are indented, and the ones that kind of stick out are the ones that are the masked the lowest, on the lowest value. Okay, and another one is a random mask. So you have for vertex, which will give you an interesting noise texture to work with. So let us try to draw something, and you can see it gives us like these interesting textures. I bet this can work good with some geometry nodes, or just adding detail. We also have the random mask for face set. In this case, we only have a single face set. Otherwise, we will be talking about the face sets in the next episode. And of course, it's going to add on one mask. And here we also have, we can change the modes and loose parts. We don't have any loose parts. Otherwise, the skull is just one object and it's going to mask the whole face. So let's query the mask. It's over, buddy. You don't have to worry about me masking and slicing your nose anymore. And I want to thank you guys for watching. Hope you learned something new. And see you in the next episode. And don't forget to subscribe and like also. Yes, it does help make me more content for you. See you in the next one. Bye bye.